The college football playoff is going to change. We know that. I think we have a question about it, actually. That's where this entire segment was derived from. Someone was asking us on Twitter earlier about the college football playoff. When it changes to the 12-team format, what's it going to be like? Will college football change? That's what Happy Vol said. And you know my thoughts on this. So what I want to tell you right up front is this is not a relitigation of whether the playoff should expand. That's already happening. It's already done. And I've shared my thoughts. And if you're new around here, here it is in one sentence. I'm not a fan of it, but I accept that it's happening. So what I'm still trying to do, and instead what I'm going to try and do here is I do think that there are some positive aspects to this. This has never been, nor is it now, a scenario to me that is totally negative. I think the negatives may outweigh the positives, but like I said, I'm not here to litigate that. So what I am here to do is talk about the positives and just hope I'm wrong about the negatives. Of course I'm not, but let's hope I'm wrong about the negatives. The first glowing bit of positive news that will come from the 12-team playoff era to me is I think it just kills the nonsensical aspects of hot seat conversation. Not the 6-6, not the 5-7 or the 4-8. Those guys are going to be on the hot seat pretty much at any program that has reasonable expectation. But I got folks out there calling for Ryan Day's job, which is just dumb. And yes, he did make the playoff this past year because other teams lost for them to make the playoff. Last year, he didn't make the playoff. In future iterations of the playoff, both of Ryan Day's previous two versions of the Buckeyes would have been in the playoff, whether they beat Michigan or not, whether they won the Big Ten or not, because they're just a good enough team to be in. Now, again, I'm not here to tell you I'm a big fan of lowering the bar to let those teams in. That's not what this segment's about, because it's going to happen. So I guess one of the positive aspects of that happening is I don't think I'm going to have to listen to nearly as many people say Ryan Day should be fired, Ryan Day should be on the hot seat, or a coach that finished 9th in the country or 13th or however deep this field's going to go. I don't think I'm going to have to listen to that nonsense quite as much, because now all of a sudden more guys are going to get to say, we made the playoff. What does that mean? I don't know. If the value decreases in enough people's minds to warrant not talking like that anymore. But right now, you know what I mean. I'm talking about programs with high expectations, and when they don't make the playoff, which is currently 4 teams deep, it's cause to just burn the whole thing down and start over from scratch. I don't think I'm going to have to deal with that quite as much. And if in the aggregate that is a byproduct of this, then that is a positive. This past year, for example, USC finished 10th. And that's, I think, after, all right, so this is if a 12-team playoff field would have been implemented. So this is the whole what if thing. It's the hypothetical field. USC would have been in as a 10 seed. Penn State would have been in. Tennessee would have been in. Kansas State would have been in. So some years we don't deal with what I'm talking about, but other years we do. There are some years where high expectations aren't quite met, and you only have a pretty good season instead of a phenomenal season. You also get the net result that for every 1 or 2 or 3 teams that make it in, just in front of the curve of the playoff, there are also teams that finish 13th, 14th, 15th that were in the playoff race. So also you get to say this: how could you put someone on the hot seat that was in the playoff race until the last week of the season? If that happens, then that's a good thing. Because what I'm trying to tell you is, if your coach has your program in a position where they're challenging for a top 10 spot, there is no hot seat conversation to be had. Never. Unless there are extenuating, scandal-related circumstances. That never should be part of the conversation. So I think that's one good thing. The other good thing, which I think may have an expiration date on it, and this is quite frankly a concern of mine, but I think another good thing is, for a little while, you guys are going to be right. And by you guys, I mean expansionists, many of whom are in our audience. I don't judge you. I hope you don't judge me. We just disagree on this. But I think you guys are going to be right for a little while. And the expansionist argument is, this is not going to dilute the regular season, but rather it's going to put more importance on more games. Now, the contingent of anti-expansionists, of whom I am a part of, have always maintained, no, you're just lowering the bar, and therefore the value that you're decreasing scarcity. So you're increasing the amount of playoff spots. Therefore, what goes into securing one of those things and the pageantry and the passion that currently goes into that, it'll kind of be diluted also. In other words, grabbing one of 12 is not as meaningful as grabbing one of 4. But initially, I think you're right. I think people will treat a playoff spot as valuable as they currently treat a playoff spot. Because I think it's going to take a little while for your mind to be reconditioned to understanding no 11 seeds ever winning the title. And you can tell me all you want to, it's not about winning a title. That is absolutely what a postseason structure is about. It's about crowning a champion. Anyone who tells you otherwise is wrong. You want to put 64 teams out there? Then you can tell me it's not about crowning a champion. You got 12? That's absolutely meant to be a tournament to crown a champion. So miss me with that. I'm not here to relitigate, though, but miss me with that. But the other part is, initially, I think that your mind will not have been reconditioned. So you'll watch a game featuring a 3-loss team versus another 3-loss team in late November, and you'll be glued to it because it's got playoff implications on it. Now, my fear, which I hope is unrealized, but my fear is, like 7 years down the road, we've seen enough case study to understand those games really have no relevance in terms of who ultimately gets crowned at the end, because those games are just featuring teams that will get blasted once they get in the playoff. Therefore, I'm not going to pretend that this game is something it's not. That's where I think we'll ultimately head. But in the meantime, yes, I do think there are going to be a few years, few little grace period college football playoff expansion years where a lot of these games featuring teams that otherwise, would have been challenging for the Gator Bowl, no disrespect, are all of a sudden challenging for a playoff spot, and it's going to be exciting. I guess that's a positive also. And lastly, now I'm fully on board with putting as many games in home venues as possible. And that includes week 1 games. I don't like seeing neutral site games in week 1, so I don't like seeing playoff games in neutral buildings. We're going to get home games in play, or you're going to be at home playoff games. We're going to get playoff games in college football stadiums, at least one round. Now, my follow-up question is, how many more are they going to give you? Because right now it looks like that's all you're going to get. What would it be? The second round, I guess. The second round of games, which is 4 games, right, Jesse? That's all it would be. It would be 4 playoff games that are going to be played in Ann Arbor or Tuscaloosa or wherever. That's better than nothing, yeah. But, if you're watching our brethren on Sundays and the conversations they're currently having, the Super Bowl's always been neutral site. They're talking about making the conference championship games in the NFL neutral site. These folks we're talking about who are structuring the college football playoff, they are not me. They are not you. They could not care less about the things we love about the sport. They are of that mentality. They are of maximization of revenue, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. I just think that there are some things that end up being lost that went into baking what was valuable to begin with in the chase for revenue. It's an age-old problem. It's not a college football problem. I don't think that we're going to get nearly what we want in terms of home playoff games, but we will get some. So that's good. So anyway, my answer is I think it's very much a mixed bag that you get with the expanded playoff. My problems have always been overarching, but even as I've stated my problems, I've always told you, like I did here, there are a few things. And if you can focus on those, and if I can focus on those, I guess I can have a nice cheery conversation about the college football playoff. Guys, thanks for watching Late Kick. Make sure and leave a comment. I love interacting with you. But most of all, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep all of this free.